Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna launch here.
I'm gonna put, and you know anything about me, you know you're gonna need to show up a little bit today.
I started recording.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Are we ready?
Maybe.
It's
Okay.
It's 1:16.
We're not gonna do any swearing because we're recording now. So if any of you were tempted, mute yourself if you need to swear. I had to just pseudo swear in the last one because, you know, out of respect to Katie, who has very low tolerance for swearing and can't bring herself to at all, which is probably not a bad thing. So I would like to invite all of you that possibly can, even if you're in your pajamas, to turn your videos on, please. It will make a difference. I said this in the last session. Yay! Jeremy, aren't you in the White Mountains? Because I grew up in Sholo. I think you remember that. Awesome.
Yes, I do. I met you at the Hampton Inn.
Yes, that's awesome. So Jeremy's in my hometown. I really appreciate all of you that opted into. Tiffany, do we get video on all three of yours?
Or is there just multiple Tiffany Smiths?
Or is there more than one Tiffany Smith? That's actually a really good question. I just assumed all of these were you. I didn't hear that, but I think
try
it was
and
really
close
funny.
out of
You
it.
broke
Who
up.
knows?
I didn't hear that, but I think it was really funny. You broke up.
I just have it on 3 devices because I can't figure it out, but I finally have it.
Awesome. I love it.
Tiffany will make sure she is here for this.
Yes. Tiffany's like, I'm not missing this one. Okay. So there's always, when you do like breakout sessions, there's always a question of like, can you make the first one? Anyway, we're going to do our best here. We're not going to do any attempts to recreate what happened previously. This is a fresh and new situation. My name is Rachelle Gibson. I know many of you. I found Prenda in November of 2018 and instantly knew that this was it with a capital I in terms of education for the world. I just felt that. And went and visited the 3 microschools. Haley, who has been our host today, she had her maternity leave 2 years ago right now. And I was subbing Sarah Kerrigan, who's in this call, her son Riley's class for 6 weeks. And it was like magical and just, but anyway, after I visited those 3 microschools, right after I heard about Prenda, I went to Kelly's house and said, I have to work for you. So here I am. And I get really excited when people who work for Prenda are here because I was like, hey, you should work for Prenda. And some of you were on this call too. So it's really fun. Okay, and I have a cohort today that I'm really excited about, the one and only Cassie. So I'm gonna mute mine and she's gonna talk.
Okay, I just wanted to take a second and introduce myself to anyone who doesn't know who I am. My name is Cassie Jarman, and I work on the Micro School Guides team. We've finally decided on a team name, and I think it's called the Success Team, which is like a pretty daunting thing to name your team, but we're going for it, daring greatly for sure. And that comprises our community, our customer support, our communications, and our mentor program. Many of those which are forthcoming. So be on the lookout for some cool things that are coming this quarter and next quarter. And I was really excited to be working with Rachelle on this today. She is the reason I work at Prenda. She saved me from leaving a career in education forever. So there's lots of gratitude for her. And we're sitting right next to each other. That's why our pictures are the same in the background. All right. Awesome. Is that a good intro? Mm-hmm. All right.
I like it. You good? If we don't coordinate our muting and unmuting, it's gonna blast your ears. So we're gonna try to do that well. For anyone that just came on, if there's any possibility of you being on camera, please do. It will help me. I did say this in the last session. I've come to the conclusion that my superpower is seeing souls, and I can't see your soul if I can't see you. And And if I can see you, it would be, I just would love to like experience you in that way. So anybody that can turn their camera on, please do. And those of you that have, I really appreciate that. So the first thing, I was on a few minutes early and I was playing the Nirvana song, Come As You Are, as our like intro to this. If you're old enough and grungy enough, you know Nirvana and that song is now playing in your head. I figured, Stephanie, that would. So when I say that, one of the again, the title, the word vulnerability is in the title of this presentation, and I made some assumptions that if you are here, then you're willing to go there. And so just show up at whatever level you can, show up at whatever level of openness, and we're going to ask you to think about yourselves and what's happening inside of you, and share some things. So an invitation to openness. So please just open your heart. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to have Cassie explain, if you've been in meetings with Cassie, you've done this, but I'm going to have Cassie explain what a permission slip is. So we're going to start with a permission slip in this meeting and have you all put your permission, everyone that's willing and open to it, putting your permission in the chat. Okay, I'm confused about there's two chats. There's two chats. Cassie's man in the chat. So I'm gonna have Cassie explain what it is and then have you guys do it.
So for the chat, I know there's two chats because Rachelle and I decided to go with Zoom because we wanted to be able to see everyone's faces. So there's the chat in the Zoom, but then there's also the chat on the Excel events. It doesn't really matter. I think maybe just for continuity, let's use the Excel events chat if you guys are comfortable with that, but you can also use the Zoom. It doesn't matter. I'll feed it to you. Okay, so permission slips. This actually came from Brene Brown. She is an author, a shame researcher, and she wrote a book called Dare to Lead for Leaders, and she talked about this thing that she does at the beginning of her meetings called permission slips. And the intention is when people step into a meeting, and I'm sure we've been familiar with this, sometimes it's nice to have a moment of reflection before you start, especially when you're diving into a topic like this one, which is going to require some thoughtfulness and probably a little bit of discomfort in some ways. And so a permission slip is where you just write down what you're going to give yourself permission to do or to feel during that meeting. So I'll give you guys some examples. Some examples might be to stay open-minded, give yourself the time you need, ask questions, show up, ask for what you need, ask for more time. So those are some examples of permission slips. And we're just asking if you're comfortable to think about this for about a minute and then post it in the Excel events chat so we can read and just really see where you guys are at today.
So, whoa, sorry. So I would love to have you do that. I'll share mine, which is crazy because it was nervousness. It was to like let go of my nervousness. And then when you guys all showed up, I got nervous again, even though I just did this like 10 minutes ago. So, so yes, please share your permission slips. The permission you're giving yourself. We'll take about a minute and just pop them in the chat as soon as you know them.
This is from I think can you ask them if they can see the chat from the last session?
Can you see the chat from the last session in the Excel events? So then we need to be somewhere else.
No, I'm in the right one. I'm gonna write. Has anyone written in the
Has
chat?
anyone put anything in the chat yet? Okay, they've put it in. So
Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Okay. Hold on. No one needs.
she's gonna figure out where our chat is for this session, because now I'm all interested to hear what you're. Do you want to switch to chatting in Zoom, or do you just want to find it? See if I can find it. Okay. All right. So, one of the things that I have, and this isn't original to me, but I completely agree with it, is that one of the most basic human needs is to be seen and heard and validated. And so for me today, the goal, like my intention around this is that that will happen for you, that you will be seen and heard and validated, and that you will be seen, heard, and validated by yourself, which is something I think we don't think about very often, and we definitely don't give ourselves often enough, is just that like, you know, I have ADD, right? There's no way this is, they're trying to do stuff next to me while I talk. So just be thinking about that as we go through this. That's what we're shooting for. So I'm going to give you a really quick, how many of you that have been around a while, I can see, I could imagine at least 2 of you. Last year, PrendaCon this time, I did a presentation on armor. Were any of you in that? Did any of you attend that? So Sarah did, Rachelle did. Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured the 3 of you did. So I'm going to give, so for those of you, this is going to be a little bit of rehash, but I'm going to give about a 3-minute synopsis of that talk about armor, which will be a jumping off point for our conversation today, because I'm really excited about that. So what I talked about last year was that the vast majority of, why are you laughing?
I'm laughing at Stephanie's comment.
Oh.
Permission. I just thought it was.
Oh, I want to see your permissions. Oh, you guys are so good at this. Well done. I'm just excited that you're showing up and that you're still with us through the end of PrendaCon. It just makes me really happy. So I'm also going to just point out, give myself a little pat on the back that I'm pretty sure I came up with the name PrendaCon. So just happy that that name has stuck and I'm going with it. So the armor. The vast majority of children at a fairly young age experience some sort of pain and sometimes even trauma in their educational experience. And what happens to human beings when they feel pain is they decide, like not decide consciously, but subconsciously, it's like, I'm never gonna allow that part of me to be hurt in that way again. And so we create, and the visual for me is armor. So whatever it is, it could be around a subject in school, it could be around a personality trait. There's all kinds of things that it could be that are driving it. But we take this piece of us and we hide it behind some armor so that we don't give the world access to it again to cause us pain in that same way. And when I talked last year, I talked about creating an environment that as guides, we could become vulnerable enough to recognize our own armor that we've either already taken off or still have and need to take off, and share that experience with our students, and in the process, help them recognize their armor and make an invitation, like when you're comfortable, like create a safe enough space and an invitation that they could then take off their armor and show up as the person that they are. So that was the very short synopsis of what we talked about last year. And so I want to jump, we're going to go deeper than that this year. And I have had some, I'm just going to say that the things we're sharing today, it feels very divinely guided. And so just happy to be able to jump in this with you guys. Sarah, I don't know why you're laughing. Maybe it's because I can't see the chat.
It's the chat.
You guys are gonna kill me if you start doing funny stuff in the chat, because Cassie's got the chat over there and I can't see, which is probably better, because anything that we need to share?
They were saying, because they're talking about PrendaCon, like dressing up as different like Prenda characters.
Yes.
I think that would be
Totally.
so
I said
funny.
I said it kind of as a joke, but it's a great, because of the whole, yeah.
Next time we're in person, I expect everyone to be
All
in
of us will be in
costume.
So, all right, we're diving in. Here we go. I always define, if you've ever like done a job for Prenda that, and maybe the guides early on, and maybe it still feels like this, but I've sort of defined like coming into Prenda as being thrown in the deep end with a brick tied around each ankle. And you just have to like swim really hard not to drown, and then we figure stuff out and it gets a little bit better. So if any of you have had that experience with Brenda, we're sorry. And we know that that can be the reality. So we're gonna dive in, and I want you to, like, first of all, I'm gonna have you close your eyes. So everyone close your eyes. And imagine like you walk in a room and there's a group of people there, and whether they're people you know or strangers, I think doesn't really matter, but they're not your most intimate friends. They're just this group of people. You walk in that room and imagine what it would feel like if you could show up exactly as you are, without facade and without hiding parts of you. So I just want you to just feel that for a second. Let that sink into your heart. So the next thing I want you to do, so you can go ahead and open your eyes. Hopefully you have something to write with or some way to take notes, because I want you to think about and then write, and I'll give you a minute or two to do this. I want you to think about and then write a part of you that is really part of you. It's a part of who you are, but you do not share it very readily. It's something that you keep to yourself, unless with your very, very closest people or with no one. But it's this part of you that you know about you and that you hide. So go ahead and just take a minute. I am not going to have you share this. So go as deep as you possibly can with this. This is yours, not for the rest of us. I just want you to be thinking about it for yourself. It's interesting because if it's deep enough, you're like, I hope nobody ever sees this paper. Like that's sort of one of the, responses if you've really like dug into this. Take about 30 more seconds and then I'm gonna ask you to do something. Again, I'm not gonna ask you to share this. Oh, yes, I can say the question one more time. A part of you that is part of who you are, but you don't share it. It stays really, like, you don't let other people know that this is a part of you. Okay, so now what I'd love to have you do is in the chat, I want you to share. I'm not gonna have you share that because you're like, wait, you just said you were gonna. I want you to share if this part of you were exposed universally in a phrase or a word, what would that feel like? What would you feel like if this part of you were exposed universally? So go ahead and put your phrase or word in the chat, and Cassie's gonna come close so I can see. Interesting. Tiffany. This is so interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys, this is really, really interesting to me. Did I give them a different question? Did I present that any differently? It was a little different, but that's okay. Because in the last group, it was like, for the most part, it was like, I might be shunned, like disowned, some of those kinds of things. It's really interesting to me that most of you, not all of you, but a lot of you talk about just like a relief, some version of relief of, and one thing that I will say that I feel quite confident in, that if I were sitting across from you and you shared it with me, whatever it is that you just wrote down on your paper, I would love you more. Whatever it is, I would just love you more, because like those things we hold on to, they are part of our humanity. They're part of like what makes us unique and special. This is going to be good today. I'm really excited. So I appreciate all of your, did I miss any? Cool. Okay, so here's the next thing I want you to think about. And again, I'm gonna have you jot this down. And and then Cassie and I are gonna share. So here's the instruction. And Cass, maybe you can put this instruction in the chat. Think about an experience when someone said or did something. And in my mind, it like is childhood, but that may not be the case. It may be as an adult. So think about an experience when someone said or did something and it fundamentally changed how you felt about yourself in a negative way. I'm going to read that one more time. Think about an experience when someone said or did something and it fundamentally changed how you felt about yourself in a negative way. And go ahead and just jot a few words down about it. There's not like a really an assignment on this, but I always do feel like taking it out of your head in some way sort of like deepens your understanding of it. So even if it's a couple of keywords, I'm going to tell you that Cassie and I both cried when we shared ours in the last session. I don't know how. I have decided, I've stopped apologizing for when I cry. I cry a lot, and it's something that I used to apologize for every time. And now I'm just like, this is how I'm built. So I'm going to give you one more minute to just think about that. So when I was somewhere between 10 and 12, and this ties into the imagine if you could feel safe and show up, like what's the thing that you hide? Something that I don't hide completely anymore, but that is still, you know, something that I have to think about to share. So when I was 10 or 12, I was a total tomboy. I still kind of am. And I had a little sister who was 18 months younger than me named Nicole, who was totally opposite end, like very, very girly, for lack of a better way to put that. And so this thing that I hide, that, you know, answering that question that I'm like navigating through, is my sexuality. And so this moment ties back to that, and it's my it's my hearing my mom say to my sister, and it's such a tiny thing, like it's so insignificant really, but it like impacted me. She's like, Nicole, I hear her whisper, she's like, Nicole, go help Rachelle with her hair. And it was like I wasn't like capable, and this is my little sister, and that just made my heart beat really hard, and led to a belief in myself that I was really ugly that lasted for decades. Like in my mind, all the way through high school and college, I was the ugly friend. And it's just really interesting to look at these things that like impact where we are. And Cassie's going to share as well. And I want you to just know that all of your students have these too. All of your students have these things that have like happened in their lives that have taken away something from them, or given them a false belief. So I want Cassie to share.
Oh, I feel nervous. I don't think I was as nervous last time. So mine is also from childhood. My mom worked a lot when I was little. She traveled for a living, and so she would be gone for weeks at a time. And I remember being in kindergarten, and I had to learn how to do my own hair. And I went to a very posh elementary school. Like the girls had twists and braids, and my mom wasn't home to do my twists or braids. And so I learned how to put my hair in a clip. Like I put it in this bun. And I thought it looked so good. And I got on the bus, and there was a girl there, and she looked at me, and she was kind of a bully, and she was like, "Cassie, did you do your own hair?" And he was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Yeah, I can tell." And there was other instances. When I was younger, I had these really thick glasses because I had a cross eye. I had giant buck teeth, all these things, and I got picked on for that. And so around 4th or 5th grade, I really started to shut down any part of me that was not cool. And so things I really enjoyed doing, I shut all of that down, and I it became my mission to be popular. Like that was the thing I needed to achieve. If I could be popular, I would be happy, and there would be worth, and I would be loved. And so I spent junior high and high school really building up that personality and joining those groups that I thought were popular. And it wasn't until I was in college that I realized I had no real connection to these people who I was calling my friends. And I had to sit with that and think, like, I've spent the last 10 years creating this persona, this facade, and it is not a representation of who I am as a person. And so when I had talked to my grandma in my early 20s, and she had said, when you were a little kid, you were really outgoing. You were unabashed, and now you are kind of quiet and introverted. And it was those experiences from school that told me I wasn't cool, I wasn't worthy of belonging, and so I had tried to do other things to find my belonging and to find my worth, and have now had to spend the last 10 years trying to undo all of that. But those experiences impacted me in really profound ways, and I have lots of regrets about the way I behaved and the associations I made in junior high and high school and early college because of that feeling from those experiences.
I wish we had time to hear everybody's story, because I think there's just a lot of value in sharing story and sharing pain and how we've come from that place. So there's a book that I read that has an analogy. The book is something like, it's not this exactly, but it's something like The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And it has this analogy that basically says, you're born, and the image is when you're born, you show up and you're like this mansion, this big, beautiful mansion. And there's all these rooms, and there's all this airiness and space and beauty. And we just are hanging out in our mansion. And then when we get to where we're verbal as kids, we start to bring people into our mansion. We can communicate things. And so we bring people into our mansion, and we open the door to this room, and they come in and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't have that room. That room is not an okay thing." And so we're like, oh, as we close the door and we board it up, and we're like, "I'm never going back in that room." And then somebody else comes in our house, we open a different door, and they're like, "Oh, you don't want to be a person with that room." And we close it off and board it up. And in the book, they talk about it, that some of us have done so much boarding up that we're like this 2-room cottage. We started out as this big, beautiful mansion, and we're operating in the world as a 2-room cottage. And the really crazy thing about that is, in all of the nearly 8 billion people, and this is, I think, one of the really important things for our kids to understand, we are unique. There is no one in the world with the package that all of the pieces that were put together that make me who I am. I'm the only one. And same with all of you. And when we take our mansion and turn it into a cottage, our potential for impact in the world can be diminished. And so so the rest of the time that we have that I want to talk, when Emily shared, I'm hoping you all heard Emily's talk this morning. Are there nods? Like, did you always get to see that? She showed like the empowerment journey, and all the guides for sure are familiar with like the house, the bridge, the mountain, and the future you. That. So we're going to talk about the rest of this conversation is going to be along those pieces. And so the first one is the house, like I was talking about. And you know, in your micro school, your house is where you talk about the core values, and it's where you make the agreements with your class and they sign their name. And I think about you. So one of the things that at the end of this, I'll invite you to do is print off all 4 of those things, all 4 pieces of that: the house, the bridge, the mountain, and the future you, because I would love to have you in this, but we're going to call it not the empowerment journey, but the soul journey. So you're going to walk through this soul journey and kind of assess and then look at what you want to accomplish. And one of the things so when you think about your house, what are the agreements that you need to make with yourself? Like, how many rooms have you shut off? And what ways can your house show up differently than it is right now? I think that's one thing that's really important to think about. And then the bridge is pretty simple. And so when I was 30, I'm 45 right now. When I was 35, I was presented with the possibility that there was something wrong with me, that I needed to like see a counselor from all my siblings. And I was like, no, I'm good. And I fought it. And then I realized like, it takes a long time. I had the depth of my worthlessness inside of myself is incredibly intense. And I'll just give you, I have a leadership coach, and he walked me through an exercise when we were talking about this one day, and he said, okay, close your eyes. Well, first he said, where were you born? What hospital were you born in and what year? And I said, San Francisco Children's Hospital, 1975. So he's like, okay, how many children were born in that hospital that year? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, just make up a number. So I was like, 8,000. My math brain later was like, there's no way it's that many kids, whatever. So I said 8,000. He's like, okay, pick a venue that would hold 8,000 people. So I was like, college baseball stadium. So he's like, close your eyes. And he walks me through, and this entire college baseball stadium is completely full of the 8,000 babies that were born in my hospital that year in my imagination. And it's like, he paints this beautiful scene of pink and blue and bassinets, and the whole entire stadium is just full of these beautiful babies. And he says to me something like, I don't remember the exact words, but it's something like, is there any way, this made my heart beat again, is there any way that any of these babies like aren't good enough or aren't, I don't remember what the words you were. And my eyes were closed, and I like re-picturing this scene, and I look straight across the stadium, and I'm like, only one. And so recognizing like at 35 that I had work to do, I started on this bridge, like this soul bridge. And one of the first players for me was Brene Brown. Like, I discovered Brene Brown a long time ago, and she became a huge part of like the beginning of that bridge for me. And if anyone like needs suggestions for the bridge, for like books or people to listen to or things like that, I'm happy to share. It's a work I've been doing for 10 years. And I'm at a place now where when I look in the mirror, like I see a beautiful person that I love. And I didn't think that was ever going to happen. Like, I literally never, ever, ever thought that was a possibility. So figuring out where you are on the bridge, maybe you've never even thought about emotional health or soul work, and understanding where you are on the bridge and where there is to go. So I want to talk about so we're going to, whenever I've started talking about the empowerment journey, I don't know if you know that this is my job, but my job is to take Prenda outside of Arizona. And so I talk to like school leaders in other states working to find partnerships to expand Prenda. And as in that presentation, I've recognized the importance of the empowerment journey so clearly that I take the time to walk these school leaders, even before I get into the model, about the empowerment journey, because I feel like what we do in those moments and what that sets up is a huge part of the magic of Prenda. And so whenever I do that, I'm like, okay, there's a mountain, but don't think about, like, first we're going to talk about the future you. So the invitation to you is to do a future you project, but I want you to set aside anything material, anything academic, anything that has to do with the success of your children. And it's really not just the future you, but it's like your highest self. Like, what are the characteristics? What are the behaviors? What are the things that the highest version of yourself can embody and create a visual of that? Like, create this visual representation like our kids do of this future you. And then when you go back to your mountain, because you have to kind of know what your future you is to put on your mountain, start at the low-hanging fruit. If you've never read Brene Brown, maybe that's step one. If you have, maybe you've moved on to Glennon Doyle, or there's all kinds of work to do. I just finished listening to a book called The Untethered Soul that had a huge impact on me. And walk your way up the mountain to a version of yourself that has more of your rooms open and less of yourself hidden from the world. Because one of the things that I think you'll find, there's a correlation between your highest self and what you're hiding about yourself. I believe that there's some interesting learning to be had if you ponder those two things. I think that you'll learn some things. And so as you walk into that opportunity, and maybe you like do a mountain and you're like, okay, I did the mountain, and you're just like, okay, I'm climbing another mountain. One of the things that as you're thinking about your mountain, hang on one sec, I have to think about this. The way this translates, so I took the first 38 minutes of this talk to talk about you, and the last 8 to talk about your students. And it's really intentional, because the level at which you can show up as the person you are directly correlates to the level at which your students can show up as the person they are. If you walk into your micro school and you have expectations around yourself that require you to put on a facade, your students will feel that energetically, and they will be required to put on a facade as well. And you will not be able to experience them as their whole selves. You will experience them as some portion of themselves, and the rest will be to please you. And I think it's why, when I talk about the Future You activity with the kids, the most exciting thing to me about the Future You activity is it's this opportunity for them to recognize that the only person that their actions impact is this future version of themselves. But that may only be able to be true if you are showing up. Because if you can't show up, if you can show up as that, then it gives them permission, to show up as themselves. Your willingness to share exactly who you are and what you struggle with them will directly impact their ability to do that. I have a really close friend that I was talking to, and her daughter had started engaging in some activities that she was not really excited about her daughter engaging in. And there are activities that she engaged in when she was younger, and her daughter would have never known that because she seems perfect. And I invited her to share that with her daughter. And she called me one day and was like, you have no idea what it did for our relationship when I opened myself up and shared things that, and it's to your guys' point in your, for so many of you in the chat that you put, your response was like, I'd be so relieved if I could just share this part of me with the world. And the invitation is do it. And allow your students the space to do that themselves. I always talk about, I don't when I'm talking to school partners, because they don't care. They care about academic accountability. They will at some point, once they've had students and see what we can do, care about this. When I'm talking to anybody else, to me, Prenda is a soul work whose byproduct is a really great academic experience. But the work you're doing with your students' souls is the most powerful work you can do in the world. And there isn't an opportunity in an education space, or if it is, it's a very small opportunity. I hope you all know that we intend to impact millions of students. It feels like we've gotten really big in Arizona, and we're just at the beginning. And then when you look at the rest of the states and the rest of the world, like, you are the pioneers of Prenda. Those of you that are in your second year, you're like 30-year veterans in any other like situation. And it's this really incredible opportunity to watch what you do inside yourselves translate into what your students will be able to do inside themselves. They won't know how unless we show them. And if we show them hiding and facade and shame and an inability to show up as the person we are, we're giving them, that's the permission we're giving them. We're giving them permission to do that themselves. And it isn't what we want for them. Cassie may or may not guess that I'm about to give her the mic and have her share some things.
That's really interesting, because something, as Rachelle was talking about this, I feel like when I first started doing this work and I read Brene Brown, I thought like, okay, so I'm gonna like do it and then like I'll be good. Like I just gotta like do it once and then like I will have self-realized and like then I'm good to go. And that's not true. I don't think that this work ever stops or ceases. And as Rachelle was talking, this thing came to mind where I was having a conversation with one of my friends about, she was pregnant and she was saying, oh man, I gotta like fix everything before I have this baby, because I'm gonna give all my things to this child. And we talked through it. And one of the things that we came to the conclusion is what if I just shared with my child? What if I just said like, I know that there's this thing about me that's probably gonna cause like issues for you. I know that I get really anxious about things, and that's probably going to impact your life in some way that when you're my age, you're gonna look and say, I wish my parent would have done something different. But how different would it be if you've had that conversation and they see that you're working through that and it's about you and it's not about them. And I think that's the same as guides, is sharing, what if your future self is on the wall with all your students and you're talking to them about your mountain and sharing with them this experience that you're going through. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect and be there, right? Like that's not the message. It's just showing them that everyone is trying to get closer and closer to this future version of themselves. And you being able to and willing to show up and share that with them, I think would be incredibly impactful. As Rachelle and I finished our last session, this came to me in January after Christmas break. I came back and was just saying this to everyone, like, what if we do this? Like, what if we empower learners? Like, what if we figure this out in such a great degree that we can do this for the millions of students we've talked about? We will change the world, but it starts with us. It starts with us being willing to take this on and do this work and have those conversations and connect with our students around this for them to be able to see that in themselves. So those are my final thoughts. Thank you guys for being here. We're just, I've been sitting in this session and last session with just intense gratitude that this is the job that we have. That as a former educator, this isn't a conference on here's how to prepare your students for the ACT. All the conferences that I've been to as an educator that we're coming and we're saying, hey, what if you just became a better version of yourself? And let's talk about that. And let's get vulnerable about that. very different than my past experience in education, professional development. So I just am feeling lots of gratitude that this is the company and the organization that we get to work with and be a part of.
I appreciate all of you. I'm grateful for all of you for being here. And I'm just really excited about what we're all going to do together. And it's one little step at a time. For some of you, you might be like, I don't even know what she's talking about. And so that's the step. And if you have any questions or comments, it's Rachelle@prenda.co. Don't put it .com. We don't have the .com. And I'm happy to just, communicate and share other things that I've learned and experienced. And I'm on this road and I'm just really grateful for it. And I'm grateful for all of you. I know that being a guide some days is the hardest thing you've ever done. And some days you're just like, what in the hell was I thinking when I signed up for this? And I know Sarah had some of those days last year for sure. and just giving yourselves, and I guess that's the other thing when you're talking about this mountain and you're talking about this future version of yourself, allowing yourself to be grateful for and recognize exactly where you are is exactly where you need to be. And it's beautiful, as are all of you. So thanks for coming to PrendaCon. Just so excited that you all got to be here, and have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks.